The air in the mapmaker's workshop was thick with the scent of old paper, dried herbs, and dust motes dancing in the slants of fading evening light. Master Reese, his face a landscape of wrinkles etched by time, lay upon his simple cot. His breathing was a shallow whisper. Beside him, Kalen, his young apprentice, clutched the old man's frail hand, his own heart heavy with a coming grief. Kalen, the master's voice was a dry rustle, like leaves in the wind. The maps we have drawn. They chart coastlines and mountains, rivers and kingdoms. But they are incomplete. He gestured weakly to a small, ancient chest in the corner of the room, carved with a symbol of a spiral that seemed to draw in the dim light. There is one final map, the most important one. It does not lead to gold or forgotten cities. It leads to a truth. Callan's brow furrowed. A truth, Master? A truth about courage, Reese whispered, his eyes gleaming with a final fierce fire. About the light that exists not beyond the darkness, but within it. He described a place no living cartographer had ever charted. The sunken temple of Al-Kahir, buried beneath the shifting sands of the great desert. There, he said, in the deepest chamber, Callan would find the first of 3 keystones. Follow the path of the fallen kings, Reese instructed, his grip tightening. Let the starlight be your guide when the sun is a tyrant. And when you reach the temple, listen, not with your ears but with your spirit. With a final shuddering breath, Master Reese placed a small, cool object into Kellen's palm. It was a simple, smooth river stone, worn by time. This was given to me by my master. It is an anchor for hope when the night is at its darkest. Do not look for a path around the storm, Callan. Look for the strength to walk through it. As the last light of day vanished, the master's hand went still. The silence in the room was profound, broken only by the crackle of the single candle on the table. Callan sat in the growing darkness, the weight of the river stone in his hand, and the weight of an impossible quest on his heart. He was no warrior, no legendary hero. He was just a boy who knew how to draw lines on parchment. Yet, as he looked at the spiral on the chest, a mysterious and powerful feeling stirred within him, not of fear, but of purpose. The first step of a long journey is always taken in the mind, and Callan had just taken it. The great desert was a sea of gold and fire by day, and a kingdom of biting cold and immense silence by night. For 7 days, Callan walked, his only guide the cryptic words of his master and the cold gleam of the stars. The sun was a cruel tyrant, and the wind a sculptor of endless shifting dunes. His water skin grew light, and his hope felt lighter. Fear was his constant companion, whispering that he was lost, that the temple was a myth, that he would die a meaningless death in the sands. On the 8th morning, as a fierce sandstorm began to brew on the horizon, he stumbled. His boot caught on something solid, something not made by the wind. Brushing away the sand, his heart leaped. It was a worn stone marker, carved with the same spiral from the chest. The path of the fallen kings. With renewed vigor, he followed the trail of half-buried markers, each one a silent sentinel from a forgotten age. The storm hit with the force of a hammer, howling around him, stinging his skin and blinding his eyes. He pressed on, clutching the river stone, using it as a focal point against the panic rising in his throat. Just as he felt he could go no further, the wind revealed a dark, jagged opening in the side of a dune, a doorway into the earth. Descending into the cool, dark silence of the sunken temple was like entering the belly of a great beast. The air was still and carried the scent of deep time. His torch flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on walls covered in ancient murals depicting a prosperous people and a great, consuming darkness that had buried their city. He moved through halls of silent sand-swept pillars, his footsteps echoing like heartbeats in a giant chest. He remembered his master's words, "Listen with your spirit." He closed his eyes, pushing aside his fear. And then he felt it, a faint, gentle pull, a whisper in his soul, guiding him deeper, away from the main hall and down a narrow, descending corridor. It ended at a small circular chamber. In the center, on a pedestal, rested a smooth black keystone. It seemed to absorb the light from his torch. But as he reached for it, a profound dread washed over him. The shadows in the room seemed to writhe and deepen, and a cold voice, born of his own mind, hissed at him. "You are not worthy. You will fail. This is not your destiny." His hand trembled, inches from the stone. This was the first test. It was not a physical monster, but the monster of his own doubt. Taking a deep breath, he focused on the weight of the river stone in his pocket, a tangible piece of his master's hope. He reached out, and his fingers closed around the cold, smooth surface of the keystone. The oppressive dread vanished. He had not defeated the darkness. He had simply refused to let it stop him. The second keystone, his master's scroll had whispered, lay in the echoing cradle of the Whispering Mountain. His journey from the desert led him to a land of jagged, piercing peaks where the wind did not blow but sang a constant mournful song through the stone. The air was thin and cold, each breath a conscious effort. The path was a treacherous line carved into the face of the world, where a single misstep meant a long fall into silence. He climbed for days, his body aching, his mind numb. The black keystone from the temple felt heavy in his pack, a constant reminder of the dread he had overcome. Here, the challenge was not a sudden storm, but a slow, grinding exhaustion that seeped into his bones. The mountain's song was a siren's call to give up, to lie down and let the cold take him. Hope felt like a distant, foolish memory. On the third day, he found a shallow cave to rest in. As he sat, shivering, he took out the river stone. In the dim light, he noticed something he hadn't before found. Almost invisible lines were carved into its surface, forming a tiny, perfect spiral. It was a map, not of lands, but of a heart. It showed a path leading inward. The final keystone was guarded by the sage of the Silent Lake, a figure spoken of in myths so old they were woven into the fabric of the land itself. Callan's journey now led him down from the piercing peaks into a deep, mist-shrouded valley. The air was heavy and still, the sky a ceiling of perpetual gray. At the valley's heart lay a lake so dark and placid, seemed to be a sheet of polished obsidian, reflecting nothing. On its shore sat a small hut, and outside it, an ancient woman with hair like silver moss was weaving a basket from reeds. She did not look up as he approached. This was Alara, the sage. Callan, filled with the triumph of his previous trials, bowed and immediately began his story of his master, the Keystones, the great quest for a truth about courage. Alara listened, her hands never ceasing their work. When he finished, she finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes were the color of the lake, deep and impossibly still. "You have collected stones," she said, her voice soft yet piercing. "But you have not yet faced the storm. You have listened to a mountain, but you have not yet listened to the silence within you." She gestured to the dark water. "The third keystone lies there, in the center. To reach it, you must walk the path of reflection." Callan looked at the lake. It was not deep. He could see the bottom. A simple stone path was visible just beneath the surface, leading to a small pedestal at the center. It seemed easy, but as he stepped onto the first stone, the water did not ripple. Instead, it shimmered and an image formed on its surface. It was not his reflection, it was a memory. The day his master died, but this time, instead of a noble passing, the vision showed Callan frozen, useless, a boy too scared to even speak words of comfort. Shame washed over him. He took another step. A new image arose. Him in the desert, not bravely following the path, but weeping in the sand, lost and utterly alone. Then another, him on the mountain, not finding peace, but screaming his frustration at the unfeeling stone. Each step across the lake was a confrontation not with a monster, but with his own failures, his deepest fears, and every moment of weakness he had buried. The path of reflection was showing him not the hero he wanted to be, but the frightened boy he truly was. He stood frozen halfway, trembling. This was the true test. The sage had not created these visions. She had only held up a mirror to his soul. The biggest conflict was not with a desert or a mountain, but with the truth of his own perceived inadequacy. To go forward, he would have to accept the boy in the water, to find hope and courage not in spite of his fear, but for it. The final keystone was guarded by the sage of the silent lake, a figure spoken of in myths so old they were woven into the fabric of the land itself. Callan's journey now led him down from the piercing peaks into a deep, mist-shrouded valley. The air was heavy and still, the sky a ceiling of perpetual gray. At the valley's heart lay a lake so dark and placid, it seemed to be a sheet of polished obsidian, reflecting nothing. On its shore sat a small hut, and outside it, an ancient woman with hair like silver moss was weaving a basket from reeds. She did not look up as he approached. This was Elara, the sage. Callan, filled with the triumph of his previous trials, bowed and immediately began his story of his master, the keystones, the great quest for a truth about courage. Elara listened, her hands never ceasing their work. When he finished, she finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes were the color of the lake, deep and impossibly still. "You have collected stones," she said, her voice soft yet piercing. "But you have not yet faced the storm. You have listened to a mountain, but you have not yet listened to the silence within you." She gestured to the dark water. "The third keystone lies there, in the center. To reach it, you must walk the path of reflection." Callan looked at the lake. It was not deep. He could see the bottom. A simple stone path was visible just beneath the surface, leading to a small pedestal at the center. It seemed easy, but as he stepped onto the first stone, the water did not ripple. Instead, it shimmered, and an image formed on its surface. It was not his reflection, it was a memory. The day his master died, but this time, instead of a noble passing, the vision showed Callan frozen, useless, a boy too scared to even speak words of comfort. Shame washed over him. He took another step. A new image arose, him in the desert, not bravely following the path, but weeping in the sand, lost and utterly alone. Then another, him on the mountain not finding peace, but screaming his frustration at the unfeeling stone. Each step across the lake was a confrontation not with a monster, but with his own failures, his deepest fears, and every moment of weakness he had buried. The path of reflection was showing him not the hero he wanted to be, but the frightened boy he truly was. He stood frozen halfway, trembling. This was the true test. The sage had not created these visions. She had only held up a mirror to his soul. The biggest conflict was not with a desert or a mountain, but with the truth of his own perceived inadequacy. To go forward, he would have to accept the boy in the water, to find hope and courage not in spite of his fear, but for it. Callan stood paralyzed on the stone path, the dark waters of the silent lake showing him a relentless parade of his own fragility. The courageous seeker he believed he had become was a phantom, shattered by the reflection of the terrified apprentice he had always been. The urge to turn back was a physical ache, to flee from this unbearable truth. He looked down at the river stone, clutched so tightly in his palm its edges pressed into his flesh. He saw the tiny spiral, the map leading inward. His master's final words echoed, not as an instruction, but as a revelation. Do not look for a path around the storm, Callan. Look for the strength to walk through it. This was the storm. Not the sand, not the mountain, but this tempest of shame and self-doubt raging within him. He had been searching for a courage without fear, a hope without despair. But the lake showed him they were inseparable. Taking a shuddering breath, he made a choice. He did not try to banish the visions. Instead, he looked directly at the image of himself weeping in the desert. He acknowledged the pain. He looked at the memory of his master's deathbed and accepted his feelings of helplessness. He did not forgive himself, not yet, but he stopped fighting the truth. He accepted the frightened boy as a part of him, not as a failure, but as the very reason he was on this journey. It was the boy's love for his master that had set him walking. It was the boy's fear that made every step an act of bravery. A profound shift occurred. The water beneath his feet, which had felt like clinging hands trying to pull him under, now felt solid, supportive. The images did not vanish, but they lost their power to wound him. They became simply memories, part of his story, but not his chains. With a heart that felt both heavy and light, he took the final steps. He reached the center of the lake and stood before the pedestal. There was no glorious, shining stone. Resting there was a simple, rough piece of granite, unpolished and plain. It was the third keystone. As his fingers closed around its coarse, honest surface, a tremor passed through the valley. The mist began to thin. He had not found a magical artifact. He had found acceptance. He had walked through the storm of his own soul, and in doing so, he had discovered that true courage is the acceptance of one's own fragile, fearful, and beautiful humanity. Kalen returned to the shore, the 3 keystones in his possession, the cold black one from the temple, the warm, pulsing one from the mountain, and the rough, plain one from the lake. He laid them before the sage Ilara, expecting a grand door to open or a profound spirit to appear. Instead, she simply gestured for him to sit. "The journey is over," she said, her voice as calm as the now stirring waters of the lake. "The truth you sought is here. Look at your stones." Puzzled, Callan arranged them before him. The black stone, the quartz, the granite, they were just stones. And then he saw it. It wasn't about the stones themselves, but what they represented. The black stone was his confrontation with external fear and doubt. The quartz was his journey to inner peace and acceptance. The granite was his final embrace of his whole imperfect self. "There is no secret at the end of the path," Ilara explained softly. "The path itself is the secret. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to take another step even when your soul trembles. Hope is not the belief that this storm will end. It is the tiny, stubborn flame you guard within you that allows you to endure the storm itself." She pointed to the river stone, still in his hand. "Your master did not give you a map to a treasure. He gave you a map back to yourself. The hope and courage you sought were not hidden in forgotten temples. They were always within you, waiting to be unearthed through action, through struggle, through the simple, profound act of continuing." Kalen looked at his hands, no longer the soft hands of an apprentice, but the scarred hands of a traveler. He felt not like a hero who had conquered the world, but a man who had finally made peace with it. The great truth was a quiet one. Our greatest challenges are not obstacles to our path. They are the very things that forge us. We do not find hope and courage before the journey. We build them with every step we take through the darkness.